Together for 3 years. Erick and I were both pretending. He pretended to love me, and I pretended I was actually being loved, until the car crash trapped us. That's when he finally dropped the act. Brooks, I've had it with your spoiled little rich boy attitude. How could I ever love you? I looked down at the piece of steel rebar sticking out of my waist and abdomen, and said quietly, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There won't be a next time. Because I think I'm about to die. 1. A loud bang. My whole world flipped upside down. I don't know how much time passed. I slowly opened my eyes, lit only by the single remaining working headlight. I saw Erick slumped sideways in the passenger seat. Erick, wake up. Don't die. My heart was pounding. The ringing in my ears drowned out most of my hearing. I couldn't even hear my own voice. My chest felt like it was being torn apart. Erick can't die. He can't die now. I haven't even had the chance to tell him. That actually, cough. Erick frowned and coughed, then slowly opened his eyes. He tried to move and realized his shoulder and right leg were pinned tight by the crushed frame of the car. Then suddenly, he let out a cold laugh. Aren't you in a bit too much of a hurry? You begged me to come back early just to crash the car and kill me? My whole body was numb, like my brain had shut down too. I stared blankly and asked, what did you just say? Erick leaned back against the twisted seat. For the first time ever, that usually composed face showed a hint of cold contempt. He said flatly, drop the act. Brooks, my parents were killed in a hit and run ordered by your dad. And today, you guys just pulled the same trick again. What I didn't expect was that he'd even be willing to gamble with your life. No, that's not true. I kept hitting the car horn, trying to attract attention. Then I frowned and said, you shouldn't accuse people without proof. Proof? Erick turned his head, blood on his face, expression full of scorn. Getting close to you was all part of collecting evidence on your family. Why else do you think I got with you? My lips trembled, but in the end, I said nothing. Yeah, I knew. I knew from the start that Erick had an agenda when he confessed to me. I'd known 3 years ago, but I still couldn't bring myself to turn him away. Because before all that, I'd already secretly liked him for so many years. A secret crush that came true, only to become a lie. I kept convincing myself that maybe Erick really did like me, even if it was just a little. Enough. I tried awkwardly to change the subject. My voice was hoarse. Right now, we should be calling for help. It was dark. The car a wreck inside. I looked around but couldn't find a light source. Call for help? Erick said with chilling calm. What you mean is, call someone to finish me off properly, right? I whispered. That's not it. Erick looked over. There was doubt in his eyes. Maybe because I was usually too sensitive. Just one wrong word from Erick could set me off. So now, he was surprised at how calm I was. He frowned slightly and asked, are you hurt? 2. I don't know. My eyes hadn't adjusted to the dark yet. I couldn't see clearly. I had no strength left in my body. But the pain was starting to come back. Everything hurt. Maybe it was just the aftershock from the crash. I bet not. Erick said coldly. You've never been the strong type. Can't even handle a little pain or discomfort. I always knew Erick didn't love me. But now it was clear. It wasn't just that he didn't love me. There were a whole lot of things he resented. Before, whenever I felt even a little sick, I'd call Erick, then boss him around to go buy groceries at the local market, make soup for me when he got home. Even when I recovered, I'd cling to him, insist on having him take me everywhere. Sometimes I'd get these random whims and ask him to drop everything and take me on a short trip abroad. So in Erick's eyes, Brooks was just a spoiled, unreasonable rich kid, always acting on impulse. But truth is, I wasn't like that with anyone else. I was just testing boundaries, proving, over and over again, look, no one would put up with all this for no reason. So Erick had to like me, even just a little. Buzz. A faint vibration. Some dim light appeared outside the shattered windshield. It was Erick's phone. It had been thrown 5 meters away, lighting up a patch of gravel-strewn ground. No wonder no cars had passed since the crash. Turns out we'd been knocked off the road. car and all. Fallen into a pit more than 10 meters deep. Middle of the night. On a remote stretch of road. Honking was useless. The other phone was missing too. Which meant, if we didn't find a way to call for help, no one would find us before morning. And by then, Erick's injuries could get worse, maybe even kill him. Wait. The car's Bluetooth could still pick up calls. I struggled to lift my hand, trying to start the car. My legs were pinned, but I could just barely reach the brake pedal. As I pressed down hard, I felt a strange pull in my waist and abdomen, but I ignored it. I hit the ignition button a few times. Nothing. No response from the car. At the same time, Erick's phone stopped vibrating. Silence. Even the one working headlight slowly went dark. Then, we faintly heard a dripping sound. Drip, drip. Liquid hitting the ground. Gasoline, Erick said with a cold smile. Brooks, if your dad doesn't show up soon, you and I are going to get blown to bits together. No, we won't. I groped around in the dark and touched Erick's warm body. He said sharply, "What are you doing?" I snapped back. "Strangling you." I felt along his neck and shoulder, found the mangled seat pressing down on him, and yanked it hard. Crack. The deformed section gave way, freeing Erick's arm. At that exact moment, a wave of indescribable pain exploded from my waist and abdomen. I leaned back against the seat, teeth clenched, swallowing the scream that nearly escaped. Erick quickly freed his other hand and started trying to force open the passenger door. But the frame was too twisted. Even when the whole car started rocking from the effort, the door stayed stuck shut. I was sweating from the pain, shivering. Then I suddenly said, "Erick, you kinda like me a little, don't you?" 3. Brooks, I like you. That was 3 years ago. Erick suddenly came to me and said, "Be my boyfriend." Okay. He was tall, with sharp, dark features. When our eyes met, it was like staring into something endless. I was dizzy, overwhelmed, but somehow, I still answered by instinct. Okay. Right after I said it, I realized my voice didn't even sound like mine. After that, I replayed that moment in my head over and over, trying to memorize every detail. A summer night, stars in the sky, Erick's light blue shirt, sleeves rolled up, showing the clean muscle lines of his forearms. In the first month we started dating, I did everything I'd imagined doing with Erick during those 7 years I had secretly loved him. And then, I happened to overhear a phone call he was having. "Yes, we're together now." Erick said quietly into the phone, "Don't worry, I don't like Brooks. As soon as I get enough evidence on Dawson's crimes, I'll break up with him. Dawson is my father. So being with me was just Erick's shortcut to investigating him." My hand was already on the doorknob, but I froze. Was I going to end it? I asked myself, and the answer was no. I didn't want to. I couldn't accept it. Besides, I believed there was no way my father would ever let him find any so-called criminal evidence. I was sure my dad was a good man, so I told myself, just give him one more chance. Just one. Maybe Erick would get tired of my temper first. I started pushing his buttons, doing things that probably looked like I was just bullying him. I'd delay him on purpose, so he had to pick me up, buy him ridiculous ties with loud colors, and order him to wear them to business meetings. Make him deliver snacks to my office. Then suddenly say I didn't want them, and demand he go to another bakery. All of it, Erick just silently accepted, pretending to be endlessly patient with me. His secretary once said, "Your boyfriend's so gentle. He really loves you." Gentle? She didn't know. The Erick who looked gentle could be so aggressive at night. But she was right about one thing. Erick did love me. I turned and looked at him, repeating softly, "You did like me a little, didn't you?" Erick seemed to give up trying to break open the car door. He turned to face me and said, one word at a time, "Brooks, listen carefully. In these 3 years, there has never been a single moment where I liked you." "You're lying." I suddenly felt cold. I lowered my head, not wanting to meet his eyes anymore. "If you didn't like me, then why did you sleep with me? If you didn't like me, why did you break in whenever I threw a tantrum? Why did you kiss me just to shut me up when I cursed you out?" Erick was always calm, rational. Everyone thought he was the kind of man you could depend on, while I was just the insecure troublemaker, always trying to rip off Erick's perfect mask, and yet terrified that one day he'd actually snap and show me pure disgust. So I was quick to anger, but also easy to soothe. Whenever he carried me to bed, I'd cling tightly to his neck. Erick would murmur, "Don't worry, I won't drop you." I'd pretend to be annoyed, pout, and say I wasn't scared. For a long time. So long. I eventually grew too tired to keep up the act. My hands would slip from his sweaty shoulders, and then he'd grab me again and kiss me. "Slow down. Call me baby," in that hoarse voice. But now it was getting colder, and I was pulled out of my memories. Then I heard Erick say, "Because you threw yourself at me. Brooks, a guy who's just using you to blow off steam. What man wouldn't want that?" A sharp, gunshot-like pain hit my chest. I froze. It took a few seconds just to breathe again. "So that's how it is," I said calmly. The sword that had been hanging over my head for 3 years finally dropped. But I wasn't shocked. Strangely, I felt crystal clear, cruelly awake. Erick slammed against the car door again. He muttered, "Horse." Actually, he didn't finish. A loud honk suddenly rang above us. A spotlight of bright light washed down. Heavy truck sounds came rumbling, getting closer. Erick turned and yelled out the window, but his voice was swallowed up by another honk as the truck passed. He turned back and said, "It was a big truck. The driver probably didn't see us." I sat still in the dark. Even my breathing was quiet. After a few seconds, I asked Erick, "Did you ever find any evidence my dad committed a crime?" He went silent for a moment, then said, "Not yet." "You never will," I said. "My dad's not that kind of person." I continued, "My mom passed away when I was 6. My dad raised me alone while running the company. He never remarried. He spoiled me. Whatever I wanted, he'd give me except one thing. I was never allowed to break the law. Never allowed to hurt people. He actually likes you. Tomorrow's your birthday. He even prepared a gift for you." I gave a quiet laugh. Maybe that's just because I like you so much. And he loves me, so he tried to like you too. Erick looked like he wanted to argue. "Brooks, actually you can look at it from another angle." I didn't want to hear more fake comfort, so I cut him off. "Another angle?" he repeated. "Yes," I reminded him. "Who is it that told you your parents were killed because of my dad?" Erick went silent, so I continued. "It was your uncle, Garrison, wasn't it?" He probably figured it out right then. His voice turned sharp. "That's impossible." Even in the dark, I could feel his stare. Cold, detached, like I was a suspect. "You've been investigating me?" "Yes," I admitted. "And I found out some things you probably don't want to believe." That was the real reason I asked Erick to end his trip early, to come home as soon as possible. Because his Uncle Garrison wasn't as clean as everyone thought. Erick's parents' accident might have had something to do with him. And this car crash tonight? I suspected Garrison was behind it, too. Erick scoffed. "So now that the crash didn't kill me, you're trying to pin it on my uncle?" He didn't believe it. Didn't think I could have figured that much out. But I didn't have much time left. When that truck's headlights lit up the car earlier, I saw it. My chest and stomach were covered in blood. A steel rod had gone straight through me from behind, pinning me to the driver's seat. I was dying. I couldn't let Erick go after my dad anymore. "Erick," I said, "open the glove compartment." He hesitated for a second, but then opened it. It was too dark to see. I said, "Feel around. On the top, there's a brown envelope. Once you're rescued, read it. Read it yourself. Who set up who? You'll find your answer there." My mind was starting to fade, running on willpower alone. I was so tired. I just wanted to sleep. Suddenly, Erick asked, "This box, what is it?" 5. I blinked slowly and said in a low voice, "Your birthday present." Erick's tone softened, becoming somewhat subdued. "I thought you said you wouldn't give me one." We had a big fight before Erick left on his trip. It was actually me throwing a tantrum. He had to leave on a sudden business trip. which completely ruined the birthday plans I had spent days preparing. I stood between him and his suitcase, arms crossed, fuming. Go ahead and leave. Don't even dream of getting a birthday wish from me. Or a gift. I've decided I'm forgetting your birthday from now on. Erick turned back to look at me, then walked over and picked me up, setting me aside. Brooks, stop being so childish. But isn't it only in front of the person you like that you act childish? I didn't say that out loud, because Erick was holding me. He tucked my face into his shoulder. I could feel the vibrations in his chest. I heard him say, as long as I have you, that's enough. I don't need a birthday gift. Thinking back on it now, he really was a good actor. So good. I actually believed I was loved. Still, I said, buying a gift for you was something that made me really happy. Another few cars roared past above us. I jolted awake. Erick was pounding on the car window. His breathing was uneven as he said, Brooks, take off your jacket. Mine's too thin. There was a metallic scent of blood. I couldn't tell whose. Maybe the broken glass had cut Erick's arm. But I couldn't take off my coat. I stayed still and said, I'm freezing. And this one's a custom runway piece. If it gets ruined, you're paying for it. Brooks, Erick ground out through clenched teeth. You're unbelievable. You better stay in the car forever. Don't even think about going anywhere. I curled my lips up, smug like a naughty kid who just got a reaction out of his crush. But Erick wasn't a kid. He wouldn't be swayed by my bratty games. Wouldn't put me first. He hated me. Before I blacked out again, I heard Erick call my name. Brooks. I didn't have the strength to respond. With my eyes half shut, I murmured weakly, go get help, leave me here for now. I might not make it. 6. Brooks. Erick's voice sounded like it had sunk into the bottom of the ocean. Distant. Fading. Then, all of a sudden, it surged back like a wave crashing into my ears. Brooks. I opened my eyes, dazed, and turned around. Erick was striding toward me. He wasn't wearing a tie. His suit was unbuttoned. I looked around and realized I was at the airport. There were lots of people, but everything was frozen. It was a dream about the day before our second anniversary. Why would you go to South Africa? Are you out of your mind? Erick's brows were furrowed. His voice was loud, completely unlike his usual composed self. He grabbed my arm hard, then spotted the red stain on my white shirt. Without warning, he scooped me up into his arms. You're hurt. We're going to the hospital. Now. I laughed without thinking. It's not blood. Just spilled wine. So pathetic. Just because Erick showed a bit of concern, I got all giddy inside. But the joy was short-lived. Maybe he was only worried, because if I died, I'd be no use to him anymore. I suddenly got mad and squirmed out of his arms. What are you yelling for? I snapped. You were the one who said the diamonds in South Africa are the best. You refused to buy just any pair of rings. I threw a small velvet box at him. If you don't want them, just toss them out. The box fell to the ground. Erick picked it up and opened it. Inside was a pair of rings. The diamonds weren't big, just modest stones nestled in elegant grooves. They sparkled, but discreetly. He looked at them for a moment, then sighed. There's been a local armed conflict over there lately. It's dangerous. Do you even realize that? I didn't respond, lowered my gaze and let him pull me into his arms. His heartbeat was faster than mine. The stubble on his chin scratched against my cheek. It tickled, but I didn't move. I didn't apologize either. I just mumbled, put the ring on and never take it off. Then I closed my eyes. It felt so warm, like I was being loved for real. I thought, if only it could stay like this forever. I swear I'd behave. I wouldn't throw tantrums anymore. But soon, a frantic voice pulled me back. Brooks. It was Erick again. Wake up. I forced my eyes open. He was shaking my arm. Hard. It hurt. Before I could tell him to stop, I heard his urgent voice. I broke the window. I need you to help me pull my right leg out. Then I can crawl out and get help. 7. He placed my hands on his right knee. Help me. Then he started pulling with all his strength, trying to free his trapped leg. I gritted my teeth and used what little energy I had left. Pulled his pants along with him. Ugh! Erick let out a strained cry, then slumped back in the seat. We failed. I collapsed too, completely drained. Erick patted my shoulder, panting. Brooks, don't give up. Let's try one more time. I closed my eyes, barely whispered. No, I really don't have the strength. And it hurts so much. Brooks, can you not act like a child? You're still playing the spoiled brat at a time like this? No matter how unreasonable I'd been in the past, Erick had never spoken to me this harshly. I looked up at him and teased on purpose. If you want my help, say you love me. Say you really like me. I'd forced him like that before. He never avoided the question, but he never gave in, either. Sometimes, he'd just smile at me gently and say, "Don't be ridiculous." Other times, he'd shut me up with a kiss. Maybe I'd really pushed him too far this time. Erick let out a cold laugh. Brooks, I've had enough of your spoiled games. How could I ever love you? Funny, isn't it? I already knew he didn't love me. So why did hearing him say it make my chest ache like it was being crushed? I exhaled lightly. Wanted to say, I get it. I know. But my throat felt like it was filled with sand. Nothing came out. That joke was terribly mistimed. I should have known better. Actually, there were a lot of things I should have reflected on. How pushy and unreasonable I was. How I never watched my mouth. How my temper was awful. I lowered my eyes and looked at the piece of rebar sticking out of my abdomen, and whispered, I'm sorry. Sorry for making you so unhappy all this time. I won't do it again. Maybe because I had never truly apologized before. The sudden sorry caught Erick completely off guard. In the darkness, he said in a low voice, If only you could. Beep, beep. Sirens blared above us. Then came the shout. People below. Don't panic. Rescue team is here. A flood of light poured down. Erick turned his head, looked at me. In that moment of chaos, I heard a rush of erratic breathing. The light was unsteady, flickering brighter and brighter. Footsteps and voices closed in. Someone shouted, Get the medics. There's a critical injury down here. The driver's side door was quickly pried open. Rescue workers were ready to cut through the rebar pinning me down. This is going to cause severe pain. Someone hold him steady. I opened my eyes just a crack and saw Erick's face. Pale, panicked, frozen. He stood behind the rescuers, lips trembling, but no sound came out. I slowly slipped the ring off my left ring finger. My hand trembled as I held it out. I looked at him, and in the faintest whisper, I said, From now on you're free. 8. Suddenly, something slipped from my fingers. The ring hit the ground with a crisp ding. I couldn't hold on anymore. I closed my eyes. Brooks. Erick finally called out, but no one was left to answer him. All pain vanished in an instant. I woke up, found myself standing in front of the car, watching my own rescue, as if from the outside. Erick knelt on one knee by the car's running board, leaning in to pull me into his arms. He held my chin in the hollow of his shoulder, like he always used to, but his arms hovered cautiously around me, as if afraid to use force. A power saw screeched. Sparks flew behind me. It's okay. Brooks. Don't be scared. It's okay. Erick whispered over and over into my ear like a chant, but the face resting on his shoulder was pale. My lashes hung unmoving. No emotion on my face at all. No need to soothe him now. I said quietly, Brooks won't throw tantrums anymore. He's being very good. So, Erick, are you satisfied now? Erick seemed to realize something. He stopped speaking. Then he started trembling uncontrollably. We were placed in the same ambulance, because I had a temporary respiratory arrest. All the medical staff surrounded me. Erick's head wound when untreated. He sat there blankly, blood smeared, eyes red, staring at my heart monitor without blinking. The wound isn't clean. He's lost too much blood. Was he moving inside the car? Might have pulled at the injury? Erick stiffened, then forced out an answer. Voice hoarse. Yes. He tried to start the engine. Used a lot of strength to push the twisted seat away from me. And in the end, He was still asked to bend in an awkward position to help rescue my right leg. He failed, and as he lay dying, he was accused of being childish and difficult. The heart monitor gave off a sharp, continuous alarm. Erick looked like someone thrown into the ocean without warning. He forgot to breathe. His back was ramrod straight. His entire body was a drawn bowstring, on the verge of snapping. 9. The ambulance raced to the hospital. Erick was stopped outside the ER, staring blankly at the tightly shut white doors. A nurse came over and said, "Sir, you're also injured. You need to be bandaged and checked. Please come with me." No response. The nurse approached, and finally noticed. His eyes were dull, like he didn't even realize he was hurt. "Sir?" She repeated. Erick muttered to himself instead. That sound. It wasn't gasoline dripping. It was his blood. "What did you say?" The nurse asked. Why didn't he say anything? Erick slid to the floor, leaning against the wall. He was hurt so badly. Why didn't he tell me? The nurse squatted to comfort him. When people are trapped, if one of them is seriously injured, it causes panic in the others. He probably didn't want to worry you. He must have cared a lot about you. Did I? I stood nearby, asking myself. I guess. I did. But not anymore. Just then, another nurse stepped out of the elevator. She handed Erick a brown envelope. You dropped this at the rescue site. Looked important. Erick forgot something that crucial. That wasn't like him. Especially since that envelope held the clues and evidence he cared about most. I looked at him, puzzled. Saw him take it mechanically, then place it on the ground. He folded his hands together, then opened them. In his palm lay the bloodstained ring. He'd forgotten the evidence, but picked up the ring I'd thrown away. That wasn't like Erick at all. He never cared about sentimentality or meaningless things. 10 minutes passed. Ding. The elevator doors opened again. Dad stepped out, eyes red. He spotted Erick, stormed over, and dragged him up from the floor. What happened? Brooks was just going to the airport to pick you up. How did he end up like this? Erick's pupils trembled. Tears spilled out. A truck hit us on the way home. We rolled down into a ravine by the highway. Dad staggered back. What about the driver? Did you call the police? Erick nodded, then handed over the envelope. There might be something in here related to the accident. Please give it to the police. Dad opened it, skimmed one page. His face changed instantly. Erick, are you sure? This has your uncle's. I'm sure, Erick said, voice flat. It doesn't matter anymore. None of it matters anymore. Dad let go, raised his hand, like he was about to slap him. But in the end, the hand landed gently on Erick's shoulder. Pull yourself together. He sighed. Brooks will be fine. But even as he said that, Dad's eyes filled with tears. He sat on the bench, lowered his head, letting me see the silver strands that seemed to have appeared overnight. I sat next to him, listening as he told Erick. That silly kids liked you for a long time. You knew that, right? 10. Erick leaned against the wall, turning his head blankly. Dad looked up at him, wrinkles spreading at the corners of his eyes. You probably don't remember, but you two met when you were kids. Well, not exactly little. We were 12 or 13, old enough to remember someone who stood out. Back then, Dad was always busy with work. I spent every school break at his company. He'd give me a conference room to do my homework. But I'd project cartoons on the big screen, or sing into the mic like a CEO with a midlife crisis. Never studied. One day, he brought in a boy. Told me to call him brother. He'll be studying here with you from now on. If there's anything you don't understand, ask him. I snorted, lowered my head, pretending to read. Door closed. The boy sat at the far end of the table. I peeked at him, unimpressed, then slammed my book shut and went to make as much noise as possible with the laptop on the podium. He left the room, probably to complain. I ran to his seat, planning to hide his books. Just as I picked them up, the door opened again. I panicked and knocked over his water. Soaked his books. He didn't get mad. Just quickly wiped the pages dry. It's fine. My mom covered them. I stared at the neatly wrapped corners in his hands. Felt wronged. Somehow, he bent down, tilted his head to look at me, then said, "Sorry, I forgot. You don't have a mom." He took one of his books, carefully peeled off the name-labeled cover, flipped it inside out, and gently wrapped it around my frayed, dog-eared workbook. "What's your name?" he asked. I lowered my head and mumbled, "Brooks." He wrote the name out slowly, stroke by stroke. Since then, Erick's name had always been hidden, right inside the cover of my books. The back of my name. "That silly kid still has the book cover you gave him," Dad said softly, looking at Erick's pale face. "Not long after, your parents pulled out of our company. We didn't see you again until Brooks got into your university." "He got into B university because of me?" Erick asked. Dad looked at the ER doors, gave a bitter smile. "Yeah, that kid worked so hard when he found out. I wasn't used to it at all. When he got in at 18, he ran home and said it was all because of someone he really liked. I asked him who, told him to bring them home. But that little brat just mumbled, said the person was a guy. He thought I'd get angry, thought I'd hit him, so he curled up and hugged his head." Dad glanced at the operating room again. "How could I ever hit him? Whether he likes men or women, what does it matter? I worked so hard all these years to make him happy. When I can't work anymore, if he wants to take over the company, he can. If not, I'll sell the shares, go travel the world with him." Just then, the operating room doors finally opened. 11. A doctor rushed out of the operating room. "The patient has sustained multiple intestinal injuries and is in critical condition. Who's signing the critical condition notice?" Erick propped himself up and took the form with trembling hands. "I'll sign it." "Erick," my father pressed down on his hand. "Let me do it." The doors of the ER closed again. Erick stood frozen in the hallway, like a lost, solitary beast. My father bowed his head and covered his face, voice choked with tears. "Maybe I should have sold my shares a long time ago. My son hasn't even had a proper trip with his dad, hasn't really been loved." Erick heard that. His body trembled violently before he dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry." I didn't look at him. Instead, I sat a little closer to Dad, rested my head on his shoulder, and whispered through tears, "Don't be sad, old man. I'm not going to die." The moment the words left my mouth, I felt something pulling me down, a force like a whirlpool dragging me into darkness. It was as if I'd missed a step and fallen into a bottomless pit. When I suddenly opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the night I first met Erick, 3 years ago, on a massive cruise ship. The investor banquet was winding down. The deck outside the main dining hall had emptied. Mr. Dawson had already gone back to rest. And I, foolishly lingering just because Erick hadn't left. Just as the lights on the deck turned off, he called out to me. Now, I stood in the shadows, watching a fake confession unfold. The version of me in that memory gazed at him with blind adoration, just about to say yes. "Don't." I shouted at myself. "Don't believe him. Brooks, you idiot." This was where it all went wrong. I never should have gotten involved with him. Never should have kept this charade going, knowing full well he didn't love me. I was arrogant, foolishly hoping he'd fall for me over time, that the act would become real. A hot iron seemed to stab straight into my chest. The pain made me squeeze my eyes shut. When I opened them again, I saw a white ceiling. I wasn't dead, just lying weakly on a hospital bed. One of my hands was gripped tightly. I turned my head and saw Erick. His face was pale, but he managed a faint smile, like someone who had barely survived disaster. He lowered his head, pressing it gently to the back of my hand. "Brooks, you're finally awake." Half my face was covered with an oxygen mask. I blinked wearily and slowly pulled my hand out of his. 12. "Brooks, you still won't see Erick?" I was half reclined against the pillows, nibbling on apple slices the nurse had cut for me. I shook my head. They've confirmed it, both the car crash that happened to his parents, and ours this time. It was all his uncle's doing. His uncle's already been arrested and sentenced. He won't be getting out again. It's all over now. Erick says he just wants to apologize to you in person. The day I woke up, I'd had a brief episode of arrhythmia, likely triggered by Erick's presence. The doctors advised him to stay away for the time being. It's been half a month. He's only stayed outside the room. Dad said, only when I'm asleep will Erick quietly step into the suite's sitting area and look at me through the glass wall of the treatment room. Do you hate him? My dad asked. I shook my head. It's not hate. I just don't understand. Why would someone insist on being forgiven by a person they don't even like? It doesn't make sense. And Erick has never been the kind of person who does things that don't make sense. Dad took the little bowl out of my hands. You just started eating again. Don't overdo it. He sat down at the bedside and gently stroked my hair. Smiling, he said, our Brooks has grown up. You can handle your emotions. But I still think adults should speak clearly about things. You two look like a couple in the middle of a Cold War. We're not a couple. Never were. A slight cramp in my stomach made me pull the blanket up. Still, I had to admit, Dad was right. Erick and I, we needed a proper ending. So when I was transferred to the convalescent facility, I didn't avoid him. He saw me walk out of the hospital room, a mix of joy and awkward tension on his face. He came up to me and said softly, Brooks, let me take you to the rehab center. Okay, I've got some things for you in the car trunk. Thank you, but that won't be necessary. I looked him in the eyes. Let's say everything that needs to be said now. And after that, let's not see each other again. Pain flickered in Erick's eyes. He raised a hand as if to touch me, but stopped a few centimeters away and let it drop. I know everything now, he said hoarsely. About us meeting as kids. About you choosing B University because of me. That's all in the past. I cut him off again, calmly. What we need to talk about is the future. I'll have someone come retrieve the things I left at your place. As for my shares in your overseas company, your legal team will be contacted soon. I'm sorry, Erick said, interrupting me. I shouldn't have believed Garrison. Shouldn't have accused him, or you. Shouldn't have said those things. Should have noticed you were hurt instead of asking for help. I'm sorry. Brooks, I'm so sorry. And I gave a light, almost peaceful smile. The worst thing you did was being with me in the first place just to use me. But I accept your apology. I couldn't bring myself to say, it's okay. But I tried to sound as indifferent as I could. Let's end it here. Erick stared at me, stunned. I looked away and walked toward the elevator. As we passed, he grabbed my wrist. Brooks. He called my name, brow furrowed. His Adam's apple bobbed. And finally he said, don't break up with me, please? I pulled free and spoke with my back to him. You haven't forgotten what you said, have you? Once I gather enough evidence to bring down Dawson, I'll break up with him. In that instant, Erick looked like he'd been struck by lightning. 13. On the third day after I moved into the convalescent facility, I saw Erick again. He was still wearing the same charcoal gray suit from the day I was discharged. His beard was unshaven, his jaw shadowed. At first, he hovered like a ghost, standing silently outside my door, trailing me to the garden and the cafe. But after receiving my wary glares and a formal complaint, he actually put on the center's light blue staff uniform. He stood before me brazenly, even tried to be sneaky by wearing a mask. I wanted to be angry, but didn't yet have the strength. All I could do was sigh. You don't have to do this. Don't try to make up for guilt by doing things that don't matter. Because guilt is meaningless. It doesn't ease the pain of the person who was hurt. But Erick said, it's not guilt. He stood across from me, backlit by sunlight, his face hidden in the shadows. Just like 3 years ago. I tensed instinctively. Then, with all seriousness, Erick said, it's not guilt. It's that I don't want to break up. Brooks, I can't live without you. I love you. I thought I was past it all. But in that moment, a loud ringing filled my ears, stabbing through my temples. A chill ran down my spine. I rushed to the bathroom and couldn't stop myself from vomiting. Erick must have followed me in, and quickly left again. I couldn't remember clearly. All I knew was I'd broken out in a cold sweat, and the doctors had to transfer me back to bed. Only after a dose of sedatives did my body start to calm down. I curled up under the covers, hearing my dad's angry voice, barely held back, and Erick's tear-choked, I'm sorry, over and over again. The doctor said the vomiting was partly due to a sensitive stomach. But more importantly, it was psychological. So Dad scheduled a therapist for me and moved up the start of our world trip. 14. In autumn, I saw the Sea of Izu for the first time and the red maple leaves of Shizenji. While feeding deer in Nara, a man far from us was suddenly knocked over by a male deer. I wanted to check if he needed help, but Dad stopped me immediately. The male deer probably saw him sneaking around. It's no surprise he got hit. I laughed it off. Next, we went to Manila and Bohol Island in the Philippines. Then to the UK, watching the sunset from Calton Hill in Edinburgh. We reached Switzerland in late December, prime ski season. Dad said his old bones couldn't handle falls and stayed in the hotel soaking in hot springs, reminding me to be careful skiing. After practicing on beginner slopes all morning, I gained confidence. Without noticing, I skied into an advanced area. A snowboarder came rushing straight at me. Suddenly, a tall man in black clothes caught me protectively in his arms. As we fell, I heard a sharp crack. Bad news, a bone seemed broken. Good news, it wasn't mine. Thank you. Are you okay? I got up and helped the snowboarder support the man in black. He seemed badly hurt, curling up and groaning softly. My fault, I anxiously said. Should I call an ambulance for you? He shook his head and stayed silent. Mute. Embarrassed. I crouched down gently. Don't worry. I'll cover your medical and recovery expenses. He hesitated, staring at me blankly through dark ski goggles. Rescue staff arrived with a stretcher and asked questions in broken English. As they prepared to carry him, the man suddenly spoke fluent German with the rescuers. The sound was so different from Chinese, but it felt strangely familiar. Tentatively, I asked, Erick. 15. He froze and slightly bowed his head, clearly guilty. I yanked off his goggles. Not surprisingly, I saw those familiar eyes and brows. I was baffled and angry. Erick, what are you doing here? He looked up, hesitating, unable to speak. I stood over him. Fine. I'll leave Switzerland immediately. As I lifted my foot to leave, two hands grabbed my calves firmly. Don't go. Erick's voice was low and hoarse, his posture pitiful. Rescuers and bystanders all gave me disapproving looks, as if I were betraying him. To protect the family's reputation, I gritted my teeth and helped Erick back to the hotel. Once inside the lobby, I dropped him onto a couch in the waiting area and turned to head upstairs. Erick quickly stood, limping as he tried to follow, but fell just as the elevator doors opened. I called for staff twice, but no one answered. I closed my eyes tightly and grabbed Erick's arm, pulling him into the elevator. Which floor? I stared at the elevator doors, annoyed. He coughed quietly. 2103. 21st floor it is. Who asked for your room number? I glared at him, then noticed his face was flushed. His arm felt unnaturally hot where I held it. Are you running a fever? I frowned. Erick nodded behind his mask. I lost my temper. You want to die? Skiing with a high fever? If you want to die, please do it far away from me. Don't let me see it. I shook him off and stepped against the elevator wall. Erick suddenly looked up, eyes trembling with excitement. Then, strangely, they welled with tears. You haven't scolded me in a long time. Can you scold me a little more? Was I enjoying yelling at this bastard? Pervert. The elevator doors opened, and I rushed out ahead, running back to the room. The next morning, Dad and I flew to Italy, dragging luggage. Rome's weather was mild. We visited the Vatican museums, the Pantheon, and the Colosseum. At the Trevi Fountain, I felt that familiar sensation of being watched. Looking around, Dad asked, Did you find Erick? I was stunned. Dad, you knew? He smirked and lifted his chin. I noticed him back in Nara. No way. Nara. Yeah. The guy who got knocked down by the male deer was him. It hit me. So you're saying Erick's been following us since the trip started? Dad sat by the fountain casually. More or less. Although he went back to the country twice and then caught up with us overnight. Crazy. Erick must be crazy. I sighed. Dad, do you have a coin? What for? Isn't this a wishing well? I want to wish for Erick to be normal and far away from me. Dad laughed softly. That's unlikely. Why not? Because coins aren't allowed here anymore. 16. Halfway through the trip, the company faced a financing crisis. Dad and I flew home overnight to meet with several investment firms. None of the talks succeeded. Without funding, the cash flow was about to break. Next step, cut subsidiary expenses and lay off large numbers of staff. Hundreds of people would lose their jobs. Dad went several days without sleep. Desperate. Then a brand new investment company approached us to fill the funding gap. I didn't believe in freebies, so I went straight to their office without notice. Sure enough, Erick was there. The office looked newly rented, small, with just a desk and a big chair. Erick, I said, pushing the door open, slapping the desk. Where did all that money come from? He stood and replied honestly. I sold my foreign company. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you crazy? You sold everything to bet on me? Erick lowered his eyes and calmly said, I'm not crazy. After a few seconds, he added, I went crazy because you weren't doing well. I was genuinely confused. Erick, weren't you always the most rational, objective, and self-aware person? Why are you acting like a rebellious teenager now? Yes, immature. I never thought I'd be the one saying these things to Erick, when before it was always the other way around. I should have refused. But if refusing meant hundreds of people losing their jobs, would that be too reckless? In the end, we reached a financing deal. The condition was, all meetings and discussions between the two parties would be handled exclusively by Mr. Dawson. Dad happily agreed, and even volunteered that I'd wash the dinner dishes from now on. The company survived the crisis 6 months later. It was year-end. A grand celebration was held in the top-floor banquet hall of the office building. I was holding what started as juice, but somehow became champagne. I hadn't touched alcohol in a year and a half. A little now wouldn't hurt, right? Just as I raised the glass, someone grabbed it. You're sick. You can't drink. Erick said seriously, expression stern. I pulled a face. The investors tell you what to do now. Get lost. I raised the glass again, but Erick snatched it and drank it dry. I looked around, not wanting to ruin the good atmosphere by causing a scene, so I took another glass from the champagne tower. But before it reached my lips, Erick took it again and finished it. I glared at him and grabbed another. He stared back and drank again. This back and forth went on for over 10 glasses. It was so childish and boring. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore and muttered, Erick, if you're sick, go get treatment. Stop meddling. I've got a dad already. Erick's cheeks flushed red. His gaze changed, intense yet pleading. I turned away and refused to look, only to be grabbed by the arm and pulled away by him. 17. I struggled all the way, but was still taken out to the terrace. There was no one else around. I finally lost it and shouted, Erick, why can't you just disappear? If you hate me, then why are you still with me? Why do you still help me? Why do you care? What game are you even playing here? He didn't answer, so I grabbed his arm and bit down hard. I only let go when my cheek hurt from the bite. The stars were sparse, and occasional fireworks exploded in the night sky. Erick still held my hand, his brow slightly furrowed, eyes reflecting the fireworks flickers. When things quieted down, I heard him whisper, I don't hate you. What did you say? He repeated softly, I don't hate you. I'm not pretending. Like a big dog wronged and hurt. Ugh. Disgusting. I scoffed loudly. Yeah, right. Nobody believes you. Turning to leave, Erick suddenly hugged me from behind. Urgently. He said, I have proof. Then he released me and tremblingly pulled a silver chain from his neck. On it hung a plain ring. He held the ring up in front of me. This is a ring I made by hand at a craft shop the day before our 2nd anniversary. I wanted to make it myself. So on the day, you'd wear it on your hand. I was afraid you'd buy one early. So I used the excuse that I didn't like rings from back home. His voice grew softer, almost painful. I didn't expect you'd actually go to South Africa to buy one. I regretted it for so long and was afraid you'd get mad. so I never brought it out. I sneered coldly. Put some effort into your lies. Rings like that are everywhere. Erick shook his head, hurriedly pressed the ring into my hand. No. Look, the inside of the ring is engraved with our initials and the date. I carved it myself. I took it, then raised my hand and threw the ring into the huge fountain below. So what if you didn't hate me for those 3 years? Erick. I looked at his pale face and reddened eyes, saying each word carefully. Now it's me who hates you. 18. 3 a.m. I sat up in bed, frustrated and furious. Erick really was a bastard. Such a troublemaker. I hated him so much. My mind was a mess. I tossed and turned for 3 hours, unable to sleep. I couldn't help but wonder. Did that ring really have engravings? Did he really make it himself that year? Erick, a workaholic who'd split a minute into 8 pieces. How could he spend time on something so boring and tedious? He must have made it recently, just to soften me up. So he engraved the earlier date on purpose. Yes, that had to be it. But I could check the craft shop's records, or payment records on his phone. Then I'd know exactly when Erick made it. So what if he did? Why am I still obsessing over this? Stupid brain. Just sleep already. 4 a.m. Cursing myself for being pathetic. I went down to the fountain outside the office building. It was still dark. The fountain was off. Everything around pitch black. Suddenly, I heard splashing from the pool. I jumped, every hair standing on end. Who's there? Brooks. Erick. Damn it. I turned to run. But he called out, voice choking. Brooks, don't go. Help me look for it. The fountain will start again in half an hour. And once the circulation kicks in, the ring will be gone forever. I gritted my teeth and took 2 more steps. Then stopped. Damn it. Brooks, you're pathetic. I walked over, took out the net I'd hidden behind my back, and snapped. Have you searched this area yet? Erick froze. I scolded him. What are you staring at? Answer me. He muttered. Not yet. We split the pool in half and bent down to search. After a while, our heads bumped together. I straightened up and snapped. Erick, you're doing this on purpose, right? Stop slacking or get lost. He ignored me and suddenly ducked underwater. Then he popped up. Found it. Just then, a huge fountain spurted straight down, drenching Erick's head. But he just stood there like a big fool and held the ring out to me. I laughed and took the ring, sat down on a stone bench by the fountain. Erick came over slowly and sat beside me. I glared at him and scooted over. Dawn was breaking. The sky was pink. I held the ring up to my eyes, frowning. Did you really make this yourself? Yeah. Did you really engrave it? Yeah. Was it really engraved on the anniversary? Yeah. Do you really hate me? No. TSK. How does this guy not get fooled? You're lying. Erick looked at me eagerly, hesitating. I gave him a cold glance and said, spit it out. I'm scared to say it. Afraid you'll feel bad. And throw up again? Actually, my stomach had been pretty good lately. No discomfort at all. But I said, but you still shove it in front of me? Just seeing you makes me feel sick. Erick lowered his head. Sorry. I waved my hand generously. Forget it. Just say it. If I want to throw up, I'll hold it in. Erick glanced at me carefully. Said, the night 3 years ago. I approached you that way because I thought you were beautiful. There was a familiar feeling. That was when I fell for you. Later, I reminded myself every day not to love you. But it didn't work. When I couldn't find any evidence, I felt both relieved and conflicted because I didn't want to break up with you. Until you pushed me to go home. And then the accident happened, I thought. His words stopped abruptly. He sneaked a look at my face. I turned to him and asked, why did you stop? He asked, are you feeling unwell? I paused. No. His eyes lit up. Shamelessly. He said, can I confess again? No. The sun rose, bathing us in golden light. Erick stared at me foolishly. Can I kiss you? Get lost. That idiot. That lunatic. Seems like a different person. Well, then, I guess I'll grudgingly get to know him again.